Hello everybody and welcome back to Ingress Point. Today what we're going to talk about is squad building with the Bad Batch. They're currently my most anticipated box from AMG, so I'm just kind of interested in what kind of squads they're going to go into and whether they're any good or not. So, looking at things from a competitive point of view, I will focus purely on competitive in this video. If you want to do things from a kind of a more lore based or fluffier perspective, that's cool. I will also do that sometimes, but you can do that however you want. I think it's interesting to just look at them as a puzzle from the competitive point of view. So, three main questions. One, are they good individually? Two, if we are building a Bad Batch squad, do we want to take every single character from the Bad Batch? And if we don't do that, who do we pair them with? And we will have to pair them with somebody just because there's not enough to fill a full strike team. So let's build a single strike team. First thing to look at is obviously Hunter. He's the primary. He's going to be a very influential character in determining the makeup of our squad. And luckily I think he's quite good. So things I like about him are he's very mobile. So if we look at Enhanced Tracker, the third ability on his card, which is reactive, after an enemy primary unit moves, he gets to dash towards that character. So potentially he'll be making 2 dashes before he goes, and indeed this might incentivize you to keep Hunter in reserve. He also can spend a force for striking distance to do a dash with an attack attached, which is good, I'll talk about in a second. And he also gets to potentially dash or fully advance an allied character depending on their tags. So he's moving a lot himself, and he's also helped moving your allies. In terms of kind of health and offense, he's only got 9 stamina, which isn't great, but he does have his ability that lets him reroll his dice. So I think it probably averages out at being, similar enough to 10 health, that it's not that big a deal. And of course sometimes on dice you can spike and you can do really, really well. Obviously you can go the other way, but I think he probably averages out as being decently defensive for what you want, and he has a decent defensive expertise. A block for 1, 2 for 2. It's pretty good. On offense, he caps out at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage on his top tree, shooting up from range 4, where he's got a decent expertise. Not great on 3 results with a crit, a damage and a dash, although it does add to his mobility. I think where he's strongest is on his Knife Fighter card. He's got good expertise, and the most important thing here is he's got a dash and a damage on the first square, and I think that's important because of this striking distance ability. It means you can dash, make a 5 dice attack, and all you need is a single crit, which you can generate through rolling a crit naturally or getting even just 1 expertise, so your chances of doing it are quite high. You get that shove, so you can potentially displace 2 people from a single objective. Very strong. And then finally his identity. He allows clone troopers, when attacking, change a fail to a hit. Really good. There's not been any kind of dice fixing in a character's ability like this before, I think. And I just think it's super strong. So it's going to be buffing up the whole entire rest of your squad, apart from presumably the other primary. And then if it's a Bad Batch, you get the nice thing of being able to choose if you want a hit or an expertise, and you get to decide that, which is nice. So yeah, overall I think Hunter's good. Now moving on to the first of the secondaries. There's 2 secondaries in the box. The first is Crosshair. I think Crosshair looks like a decent sniper. He can do quite a bit of damage. He has got mobility in that he has Find the Shot, which lets him climb and then immediately make a focus action. And his expertise is grand. It's fine. He can cap out at something like 8 damage, which is 9 if you include the expertise. He's very reminiscent of Gideon Hask from the starter set, but in my opinion maybe slightly worse in that Find the Shot. It lets him climb. Gideon gets to do a jump. Gideon will be acting as a kind of bonus for those Mandos around him, and he's just generally a bit faster. Things that Crosshair has that Gideon doesn't have are this Trick Shot ability, where he can potentially do a single damage and remove hunkers from an enemy unit. This is pretty niche, I think. One, because Crosshair has to be unengaged, and units in this game are quite often engaged due to the nature of the game forcing you up the table and to contest objectives. You get engaged a lot. And even then, if he gets to do it, it's good if he removes a lot of Hunker tokens, or in niche situations like you're playing against General Obi-Wan, where you want to take Hunker tokens off things, then it's pretty good. Or if something is 1 damage away from death, then it's really good and you can just kill something. But it doesn't seem amazing to me, and I much prefer, I don't know, something can get forward a bit more, can get stuck in a bit more. So, from my opinion, I think Crosshair is definitely good, but he's maybe a little bit unexciting, especially when compared to Wrecker. So, Wrecker to me seems very strong. So if we just go through his abilities first. Bulldoze, so at the start of his activation he gets to dash, does not cost a force, which is very good, and he can do an auto push off it, so that's great. He's got an active ability for 2 force, which lets him do a ranged attack. This is expensive, and his ranged attacks are pretty good, but they're not amazing. So I would say that this is not something you're going to be using a lot, but potentially very powerful in the right situation, and definitely just nice to have. I Wasn't Sneaking is very good. So you choose an active objective within 3 that you don't control, and then a la, Not So Fast or Dark Fury, you roll 5 attack dice, and the opponent takes damage for each hit and crit. And then if it was wounded by this effect, you gain an additional momentum token, which is really good. Like, that's what you need to do to win the game, is get momentum, move the struggle token. So that's very strong. And then he also, I can't believe he's got even more, is he's got an ability to, whilst not wounded, give Bad Batch characters steadfast and give clone troopers protection. So this includes him, so he will have steadfast and protection, and he has 10 health. So he's just a real pain in the arse to get off points, to kill. Defensively, his boom side is obviously very bad in terms of defensive expertise, but it doesn't matter that much necessarily because of his steadfast protection and good health. And then tuning at distractions, it's decent. 1 to 2, you're turning a crit to a hit, which is important, and then on 3 you're already generating a crit to a fail. So not bad. So when you're not active, you definitely want to be in your tuning at distractions side. And then his kind of offensive suite it's fine. He doesn't do that much damage, but he can be very mobile. He's got shoves. I think it's his abilities that make him very exciting. So if you look at the fact that he can bulldoze and push someone, he can I Wasn't Sneaking and kill someone, he can attack and push/kill someone, and then he can attack again with ha 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 ha, yeah. He can potentially impact 4 different enemy characters and move them off points, or kill them. That's insane. It's obviously that's not going to happen very often where he does all 4 of those things, but he just has enormous potential for controlling the board, and he is tough. He's good, and I think he's one of the main reasons to be excited for Bad Batch. Now, moving on to supports, you've got Echo and Tech. So their first active ability is Fight Smarter, Not Harder, where you can potentially, if they remove a Hunker token, they can remove an opponent's control token from an objective. This is pretty niche. There's not going to be that many situations where you're going to want to use it. I've put in the Grand Inquisitor hiding in the corner here because he has Secrets Uncovered, which essentially does the same thing but costs 2 force, but has a bigger range. And that's a niche ability. That's not the reason I think anyone really takes the Grand Inquisitor. You use it sometimes, but it's not a big deal. And I think kind of having it as an extra ability on a support feels better than having it on your primary. So, it's decent. It's nice to have. I don't think it's anything spectacular. They have Keep a Low Profile, which is just defensive maneuver of the other clone troopers, but with another name. They can potentially remove conditions from allied primaries and secondaries. And they also add 1 dice to their attack and defense rolls when they have a hunker. So they're kind of similar to Night Sisters in that regard, who get that ability on their defense rolls, I believe. And they kind of need it because they've got 5 defense and 4 defense. 4 defense especially is bad. So going to 6-5 when they have a hunker is pretty good. Even more when they're defending from range attacks. They've got good offensive expertise. Just for a support, a single crit on 1 to 2 expertise is good. They've got a push not on the first square but on the second, so still somewhat reliable. They're not doing amazing damage, but they do have a reposition as well, so they can do a lot of different things. They can get around the board. They're not as good as Magna Guards, but what is? I think they're fine, and they're probably in the kind of upper echelons of Clone Trooper supports. They're definitely better than the 501st. They're definitely better than the 212. So I think, these guys are up there, especially when you factor in their synergies with Hunter and Wrecker. Okay, so we've discussed our primary, secondary, and our support. Now the question is, for the other squad, who are we going to put them with? I think we're going to go down a Republic route. I'll talk a bit about some other options at the end of the video, but for the Republic route, the support of our next squad will be the ARF Clone Troopers. There's no choice in the matter. They're by far the best ones. Coordinated fire, expose is very good. They have all essentially the same bits as the more expensive ones. I think you just play these guys even if you're playing a point down in your squad with an 8 squad point primary. You just put in the ARFs. So we've gotten them out of the way just because it's an obvious answer, and that puts us back into the Republic primaries. So there's 7 of them we need to consider. I'm going to talk about them each kind of one by one and rule them out and end up with who I think is the best. So first to talk about is Ahsoka. Ahsoka's pretty good. She's very mobile. She, especially in response to your allied units getting wounded, she moves and attacks. But she's a little bit anemic on offense herself. She often does nothing with her attacks, I find. And I think to a certain extent she may be outclassed in this particular list by Plo Koon, and I'll talk a bit about Plo later. I think you could make a call on your meta as well. If you're seeing a lot of big melee attacks, Ahsoka gets better because she can just use her ability to deflect those attacks back, and it just kind of makes her pointless to attack. So, don't rule her out by any means, but she's not who we're going to go with today. Anakin is... I think he's got one very exciting thing if you could put him in with, which is if you combine him with Wrecker. So Anakin has his ability to move the struggle token an extra space when he wounds something towards you, and Wrecker is getting you potentially extra momentum tokens. So you can just swing struggles very quickly with the combination of Anakin and Wrecker. But Anakin is very force hungry, so he needs 1, to do his jump, which he will want to do every single time he goes. 2, once he gets wounded, which he will get wounded. And then if he needs to attack twice, which he doesn't always need to, it's 2 force to 3 force. So he's sucking up an awful lot of your force in a way that Republic kind of struggles with. So there's definitely strong potential there, and definitely something to be, considered and tested with. But not today. I think he's probably not the optimal off the initial analysis. Obi-Wan, we'll come back to Obi-Wan. Darth Vader, we're not going to go with Darth Vader. So this is kind of, it's a tricky one to say that, because Darth Vader is always very strong. He's just a good character. He's mobile, he's low force, he does a lot of damage. He boosts all of your other characters with his ability to let them roll extra dice. But I think he's not that synergistic with the Bad Batch in a way some other of these primaries can be. And also I think if you're doing a Vader list, you can probably pair him with better things than the Clone Troopers. I don't think they work that well together, because your Clone Troopers are low health, so don't want to be taking damage for melee, and their melee in general isn't as good as their ranged offense. So I think that's a reason to leave Vader behind. But maybe he is the best. It wouldn't be a surprise if he actually turned out to be the right decision to me. Luminara, Luminara is... I find she's a bit of a controversial choice. People either love her or hate her. I think she's quite good. I like her identity in that it gives movement and it gives healing. The healing's not as good as the movement, and unfortunately I think for this squad, if they triggered the other way around, i.e. if your units got wounded and a Luminara was able to move someone, it would be a lot better, because I think you're going to be probably getting stuff killed more than you're killing stuff in a way where it matters. And Luminara, I mean, it's nice to have that outside of activation movement, but I feel that she... oftentimes her offense is lackluster. She kind of just stands on a point and maybe doesn't contribute that much outside of her identity, but she stands on that point real well. She's impossible to kill, really, if she's rolling in any way decently. So again, she's not bad. I wouldn't rule her out if you like playing with her, but I don't think she's kind of the top echelon of these guys for this particular Bad Batch squad. Plo Koon we'll come back to in a second, and Mace we're going to rule out because if you bring Mace you have to bring Pons, and Pons is a dead activation, so you can't do that, unfortunately. So the two we didn't rule out are Plo Koon and Obi-Wan. Plo Koon I like because his two tactics, I mean he's got his force push and stuff which is good, although force hungry, but I think it's his two tactics, or his tactic and his identity, are his most interesting thing. So at the start of this unit's activation, choose a Galactic Republic unit, so that's everyone in your squad currently, and then that character can dash, and if it's Trooper or a Padawan, so uniquely with Bad Batch and Republic, your primary is a Trooper. So this clause also counts for Plo and Hunter. If he moves him, one character in this unit may dash. So Plo and Hunter can both dash on Plo's turn, which seems pretty good. Similarly, you have this his identity where he can share expertise, which I don't think is amazing in this list because Bad Batch have decent enough expertise. But it lets Plo dash towards the attacker without needing to take the expose. So you can just get an awful lot of dashes on Plo. Again, with the unique thing of this list that everybody is a Trooper or a Padawan other than Plo Koon. So that's pretty good. And I also just like Plo generally. I think his offense is decent, his defense is decent. He can often get his force push for free. So I think that's definitely something to consider. Obi-Wan, he's kind of the original S tier, if you want to put it that way, Galactic Republic guy. He was the best when he came out, and he's probably still the best in a lot of ways now. So he's got all of his abilities, which don't necessarily matter that much, they just make him individually strong. But his knowledge and defense identity is good because it lets stuff utilize their hunker tokens. Bad Batch, they're not. So Echo and Tech are generating hunker tokens, which is pretty good, and they can spend those hunker tokens to move back onto a point. And that's where this identity is really strong. If someone pushes you off a point but doesn't kill you, the Galactic Republic character can spend their hunkers, heal, and then dash back onto the point and stop your opponent from taking it off you. That's where it's strong. So Echo and Tech are generating their hunkers they can use. Hunter and Wrecker aren't natively, but they are doing an awful lot of movement outside of their actions, so it's not unrealistic for them to be taking a hunker action, or a take cover action rather than getting a hunker token, specifically in the early game. And then our ARFs are getting hunkers natively. Obi-Wan isn't, and then our secondary we'll talk about in a second. But I think that's very strong, especially when combined with Wrecker's steadfast and protection bubble, because you're hard to get off the point in the first place, and if they do manage it, you're just popping yourself right back on. So I think both of these guys seem strong to me, but I think I'm going to go with Obi-Wan. I think this hunker play and making your Bad Batch guys a bit stickier is probably the way to go, in my opinion. So now we've decided on our support, our primary. So who's our secondary? I don't think it's going to be Crosshair, unfortunately. It's going to be Captain Rex. And there's a few reasons for this. One, I already talked about Crosshair and what's good about him and what I don't like about him. And I think with this particular squad we've kind of built, I don't think he really fits in. But Captain Rex, on the other hand, does. So, one really good thing about Captain Rex is his tactic. Lets another Galactic Republic unit dash and gain a hunker, so that plays in well with Obi-Wan. He himself is very mobile because he has defensive maneuver. He's got a reposition on his attack tree. He can get a move on soldier himself, so he can get all the way across the board on turn 1 basically. He's giving himself steadfast with Brothers in Arms. He can heal, he can attack twice. He's just a very good unit, and I think he specifically fits in very well in this squad. So it's going to be Rex. So that leaves us looking at this is our strike team. So half Bad Batch, half not Bad Batch. You know, poor old Crosshair. I think he is good, and I think he will see some play, but to me this looks a very, very powerful squad, and I'm very excited to play it. And I would, put my money down saying this is probably the strongest way to play Galactic Republic once Bad Batch come out. And I am very much looking forward to doing so. So that's... yeah, there's our strike team. So there's one other way I thought you could maybe look at it, and that is working in the scoundrel keyword. I don't think this is particularly good yet, but maybe when more scoundrels come out you could see Bad Batch fitting in a bit better. But some, you can do interesting synergies. For example, here's one with Hondo. So Hondo's identity, fair what's fair, lets an allied scoundrel character boost the number of dice they're rolling, although potentially putting a condition on a friendly unit. And then Echo and Tech and Crosshair have their forward planning and relax I'll handle this abilities, which let them remove conditions. So there's a bit of synergy there, something a bit fun. You can get up to quite high dice totals. Like if you put in these guys, so if you had Hondo and Vader, for example, you could be rolling a ton of extra dice. Although I'm not necessarily sure their trees have enough damage results to make that worth it. But you can see there's a lot of ways Bad Batch can go, and I'm very excited to see what other squads they can fit in the future. But that's all we have for now. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the video. This is only my second one. I'm enjoying doing them. But if you've got anything you want me to cover, or any questions or anything, let me know. And like and subscribe, I suppose. Thanks for watching. See ya.